So good evening. This is the January 4th, 2024 initial meeting of the Capital Investment Program Subcommittee of the Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. The purpose of this CIP subcommittee is to prepare, as we do every year, a report on the town manager's proposed capital investment plan and the capital investment budget. I'm Hector Gunther. I was chair of the subcommittee last year, and maybe I'll just take a roll to make sure everybody's here. Is Neil Kleinfeld here?
Here.
Jim Sproul
here,
and Hector Gunther is here. That's 3 out of the 4 members. Is that correct, Mark?
that's correct.
So we do have a quorum. So there are a variety of things we want to do tonight. The first would be to solicit any public comment that people might have. So I don't see any members of the public. Gordon Starr, town councilor, you're on. Do you care to make any comments?
No, I'm just here to listen for a little while, Hector. Thank you.
Okay, great, Gordon. Thank you. So according to the agenda, I think the first topic is to pick members of the subcommittee for various roles. I would suggest that we start with the chair. So anyone is able to nominate a chairperson, and I'd be happy to play a leadership role this year, but I would like to nominate Neil Kleinfeld to be chair of this subcommittee for the 2024 report. Second
that.
Okay, great. Mark, can we vote? If we have a quorum, we can vote. So let's take a show of hands. Jim Sproul, please.
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
And Hector is a yes. So that's a lock. Neil, you're the chair for the 2024 report. So Neil, would you like to carry on?
Sure. Shall we nominations for any vice chair?
I can't recall. Did we have a vice chair last year?
Or a co-chair?
Or co-chair?
Lillian had suggested we might want to have a co-chair. I wasn't quite, I think it's more of workload type of things. But I noticed here today to explain.
Yeah, so let me just see something. See, last year we only had a chair. My personal view is I think it's such a small committee. I'm not sure that we need a vice chair. What do others think?
I agree. I know that the work that Neil puts out will be more than enough to guide us. So,
okay, Neil, how do you feel?
I just wanted to bring it up since Lillian wasn't here.
Yeah,
I think I can. I think we can, as a team, can reach out if we think we need more resources.
Yeah. All right. Well, if everyone else is comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with just having a chair and then three committee members. Who will Lillian be formally a member of the CIP subcommittee?
I don't think so. I think she's volunteered if we need help to help, but
okay.
She assigned herself to the operating budget subcommittee for later this year.
So who is the 4th member is not on tonight?
Wendy.
Oh, Wendy Solomon. Okay.
Has anyone heard from her? I haven't recently.
I haven't as well. Why don't you keep going, and I'll text her to see if she's able to join.
Okay, good idea.
All right. Okay.
Well, why don't we get to the to keep this thing moving along so we can end it within an hour. If I can share my screen, I'll put up the agenda and we'll just dash through it as quickly as we can.
Great.
Hope when join us soon.
Right.
I made you a co-host, Neil. You should be able to share screen. Do you see the share screen button at the bottom of your?
We're gonna see if we can do this.
Perfect.
You want to see that?
Yes.
Okay. I would propose that we aspire as a group to be proactive and increase the report value as much as we can. And by doing more plan analysis and not just commentary on what we're given, I think we can dig deeper and provide some new insights to readers they can think about. But in terms of, we've gotten the election of subcommittee roles taken care of. I think what I'd propose in the agenda is to talk about the report sections, the content, then go on to what I'm proposing, which I think you all know, is to use a single word on the web, one integrated document, so we don't have to keep emailing versions around and wondering if we have the right version. Talk about the calendar and then allocate responsibility for sections and content among the members as much as we can tonight. That makes sense?
Yes.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. I think the on this page, the last year's report table of contents is on the left. It started with a cover page, had an introduction and methodology, then 5-year submission of presenting the data. Excuse me. Getting over a cold here. And you can read. I would suggest we discuss the following changes. I would suggest adding a table of contents to the cover page, since it doesn't do anything any other way. And it kind of tells people what's coming up and where they can find it. Any comments?
Yeah, excuse me, Neil, what date did you send this document to us? Because I'm trying to find it in my computer.
Last week, probably last Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay,
Yeah, I see it Wednesday at around 8:57.
what date was that?
The
CIP
27th.
to open.
Wednesday the
Oh,
27th.
Yeah, okay, I've got it, thank you.
Okay. And next thing to consider would be adding an executive summary on page 1. I think we ought to start, my feeling is we should start with a clear, concise, what do we want the readers to know? What are the issues and the recommendations right up front? So if they only get through the first page or two, they know what the rest of the report is, they can get back to it.
I wholeheartedly support that. I think that's a big proponent of the way people read today, and I think an executive summary would allow us to say what we need to say up front, and if people want to go through more detail, they'll be there for them, but it at least allows a reader who has limited time to at least get the general gist of what it's being expressed in the document.
Any other thoughts? Hector?
So far so good, Neil.
Okay. I think then there may be a need to add a section that would summarize what are the key elements of the town manager's plan table that was not exactly in last year's plan document, but shows 2 things. One would be the 3 funds and what was submitted versus what recommended in total in terms of dollars. And then potentially a chart that actually consolidates not just by department, or actually not by department, but by what I would call area of need, like wastewater, which is right now dispersed between enterprise water pollution control, CWMP, and actually you can find some of it in MEA. I think that's a more strategic way to look at where the money is going. The next
So-
idea, yeah.
So let me just ask a question. So this would require some subjective choice by us to assign a particular topic to an area of need. So wastewater, would that encompass, that's obviously sewage, but would that encompass any other water supply related issues?
Oh, I think potable water would be the water supply area. That's correct. It's a different section. And actually
Okay.
recreational and other water mitigation would be a third. But I agree, there will be some judgment possibly, and I think we want to label that to be CFAC analysis as versus what we were
Yeah.
given.
Yeah, so in principle, I think that's a, oh. Somebody, did everybody see that? Somebody else was on. Mark, has
Yes.
anybody else joined the call?
Yeah, we're getting Zoom bombed.
Zoom bombed?
Yep.
So you can
I
disable,
just
you can,
removed them.
okay, okay. So in principle, I think this makes sense. In fact, makes a lot of sense in my opinion, but we will have to add a footnote or two when we've made a judgment call as to where a particular investment belongs in terms of a need.
Yeah, and I think we certainly would vet it, you know, with Mark to make sure that he doesn't see some egregious issues with it.
Right.
And Neil, what benefit would that have for the town manager? Do you think that that would open up a thought process or a selection process based on that?
Well, no, I think I actually did that for last year using my judgment for where things went.
Yeah,
And what becomes even clearer is that wastewater, actually water is 80% of what
Oh,
we're spending
okay.
money on.
okay.
And I don't think that really comes out any other way.
No, I guess you're right, yeah.
But I think that's something we'll have to, you know, we should look at. Whether it ends up in the report or not is something we can determine in March.
Okay,
Right. Because I can think of, there's sewer, there's drinking water, there's boating, there are marinas, you know, all of which have some aspect of water in them.
Yes.
So we'll have to make sure there's no ambiguity and why and the rationale for choosing how we've assigned them is clear. But in principle, I think it's a great idea.
Okay. The fourth change I'd make to last year is I would consolidate the two 5-year plan sections into one. I think it just works better. Last year it was split between page 3 and page 8.
Right.
Uh,
That makes sense to me. Yep.
Fifth, I would add a section about how towns' debt and annual debt service will rise due to last year's town manager's recommendation did have a lot of information about debt, but it was never spoken to. I think this year, with what I would estimate is going to be a tripling of debt just in this year alone, based upon the CWMP and school. I think it's going to be an important topic to flag and explain.
I quite agree. Let me just drill down a little bit where you say triple of debt. So the debt you're talking about end of fiscal year 23 versus end of fiscal year 24 or 24 to 25. What point in time are you picking to do that multiplication?
If we can pick that later, of course, but I was thinking more 23 when it was 107 million, and it'll go to 250 million if we approve not all of, but much of, you know, and it'll all depend on where the town manager comes out. But if he approves CWMP, the water supply, most of the school, and not an enterprise, as has been the case in the past, I think we should do the analysis. If it turns out I'm wrong, then we won't put it in.
Okay.
But I think that's likely to be, from what the numbers I've looked at, to be it's going to be a huge thing, and it's going to go up potentially to 700 million by the end of the 5-year plan.
Okay, so you're talking about the end of fiscal year 24. But the start point is the end of fiscal year 24, which comes up in, well, the end of fiscal year 25, which comes up this June 30th, right? And then you're saying, what's the forecast debt for June 30th of 2025?
Yes, and then 26, and then 27, and 28.
Okay, okay,
And I think the issue is almost, one is debt, but I think the real issue, and you know, the town has made provision for some of this, is the annual debt service.
yeah,
Which is gonna, as you know, using your term, is gonna potentially put squeeze on other departments if we don't figure out how to cover the
right,
parts that aren't already covered.
right. I mean, so debt is a dynamic thing, and one of the variables that will go into, unless Mark has firm forecasts, to forecast what the town's debt is going to be at June 30th, 2025, is partly a function of interest rates and amortization between now and then. So we just have to be aware that there's going to be a little bit of sort of ambiguity as to what the exact number will be in 2025. But Mark, maybe you could weigh in here on this matter.
Certainly. Thank you, Hector. Yes, so part of our analysis every year, when the town manager brings forward a proposed capital program for funding, is what is the debt service projected to be on the projects that are being recommended? And does that fit within our capacity to provide for the annual debt service in subsequent fiscal years?
And let me just interject a question. And being recommended, you mean by the town manager or as an outgrowth of the process from the departments?
By the town manager. So what the
Okay,
departments submit
yeah,
substantially exceeds our ability to provide for.
right,
And so that's why you see a lot of projects that get submitted for the ensuing fiscal year not receiving funding. And does not become part of the town manager's proposed capital program because we just don't have the resources.
yeah,
And over all the projects that are submitted for the 5-year period far exceed what we currently have available in our projections for funding. And so these things get pushed out. They keep getting pushed out.
okay,
And every year we try to provide additional funding towards the capital program. For example, in FY24, if you recall, we added an additional $2 million to the annual funding to the capital program as a result of the large increase in Chapter 78 we received that allowed us to take more tax dollars and push them towards the capital side of the budget.
right,
And on top of that, we've part of a 5-year plan to add $750,000 of new property tax growth to the capital side of the program as well. We can chip away at it like that, but suffice it to say, we need substantially more than just that to provide for the several $100 million that are being asked for. And so what happens is a lot of the projects that are submitted for funding don't receive funding in the year that they ask. They get pushed
Right.
out. And
Right.
many times we find grants. So for example, the airport.
right,
Mhm.
We authorized last year, let's see, we authorized almost $4.4 million in new borrowing authorizations for airport projects. What ends up happening is much of that ends up coming through in the form of grants from the FAA and the Mass DOT, and we end up not issuing those bonds. And so it's like Hector said, it's a very dynamic environment, and there's a lot of things in play, and so, but we do absolutely look at the impacts on the future operating budgets to gauge what can we realistically bring forward for a proposed program, because we can't approve projects for which we cannot provide for the debt service in the following fiscal years.
Right.
Just can't do that.
So if I could just interject a question. So this forecast that that Neil is calling for, how quickly will this forecast, which you would develop, Mark, be available? Is it available within a few days of the town manager's final approval of the CIP?
We have a draft of the capital trust fund capacity right now available, which
Okay.
I will share with the committee.
Okay.
I'll send that out, and right now it's looking like we can afford anywhere from 10 to 15 million dollars in new borrowing authorizations on top of $4 million in cash appropriations.
Okay.
So
So
that's
when-
really what we're limited to for the general fund. For the enterprise fund operations, it's a completely different environment. We have to look at, you know, the airport. Generally, we can afford to do everything that the airport brings forward, provided they get listed in the FAA's capital funding program. Water and sewer, a lot of those projects end up on the ratepayers. And so we
Right.
have to adjust rates in order to
Right.
pay for those. The
Right.
sewer expansion program, the CWMP, we have capacity. You've seen my projections in the past on how we plan on funding the CWMP. We're currently in the middle of updating that projection. It's similar to
Okay.
the trust fund projection. When
Okay.
that's ready, I'll share that with the committee.
Okay.
And that'll show what our capacity is there before we need to go and consider a debt exclusion override vote to keep implementing that program.
Right. So that's all very helpful. So Neil has said in here, and this is a question for Neil, you say our CWMP, our debt will quickly double and maybe triple. What time frame are you referencing, Neil, when you
Next-
have a back? Sorry,
Next 2 years.
the next three years?
Within the, as Mark, within the next 2 to 3 years for sure. And that's what we need to, I think, focus on in that section. I don't claim to have the exact numbers that
Right.
Mark hasn't developed yet, but I think and within the debt carrying capabilities that Mark has laid out before, in a presentation just a few months ago, there wouldn't be any reason not to approve the $170 million of CWMP being requested for next year that I could see.
Okay. All right. So what you're envisioning with this table, and then we can move on, and sorry to drill down too much, but you're envisioning a forecast debt level by fiscal year and possibly going out through the 5 years of the CIP plan.
Yes,
that
I think that would be optimally. I think it's going to be important to make it clear that we have been cognizant that the debt situation is going to change dramatically for the town.
Right.
Will then
Right.
cast down to the operating budgets if we're not careful.
Right. And Mark, you think that would be doable after Mark Ellis has approved the CIP plan for the upcoming fiscal year?
Yes, we will be able to quickly determine what the future debt service impact is projected to be based on what's proposed.
Okay.
Now, if Neil is talking about doing that analysis based on everything that was submitted,
No,
that's very different.
yeah, I don't think that's what Neil is driving at.
Okay.
Neil, you're driving at based on Mark L's approved CIP plan for this year. And I think, I think your forecast, Mark, will be pretty firm for the first couple of fiscal year ends of the 5-year period. But once you get to years 3, 4, and 5, there'll be some margin of error around the actual debt number at the end of a given fiscal year.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
we-
and just remember, the town manager only proposes 1 year funding.
Right.
Only going to propose FY25 funding. He's not going to propose what the plan or what he plans on funding for 26, 27, 28, and 29.
Right.
We only
Right.
do 1 year at a time.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to keep us on this point, but I think, Neil, I think this would be, if we can come up with some numbers that are fairly realistic, especially in the first couple of fiscal year ends of the 5-year period, I think that will be enormously helpful. And if you're right, that our debt is, the town's overall debt is going to triple within 2 or 3 years, I think that is absolutely something we should put in here and discuss.
That's my hypothesis at this stage, that if the numbers come out and say that doesn't, I think that's actually really great news to
Yeah,
include in the report.
yeah,
I think the problem is just looking at 1 year at a time, given what we're seeing for CWMP in the schools,
right,
I would worry about that.
right. Well, let's see where Mark Else comes out in terms of what he approves, but even with that, part of the, Mark Millen, one of our hypotheses is that the CWMP spending is only discretionary within a certain margin of error, that this sewer spending, where the town is under mandate to do these projects. And so Mark Ells, I think he is, in some cases, he is forced to say yes to some aspects of the CWMP plan that is proposed by DPW.
Yeah, Hector, it's a good point. I guess I wouldn't characterize it as a mandate because we're not under any administrative consent order or a
Right.
court order, but certainly their regulators are going to be watching us. The CLF
Right.
is going to
Right.
be watching us.
Right,
And under those new Title V regulations, there is a requirement that we report on a 5-year basis our progress towards implementing solutions to meet our TMDL requirements.
right,
And so if we don't show progress towards that, yeah, then we could become under some kind of administrative consent order,
right.
court order, or something else. But yeah, no mandate in that characterized like, a consent order or a court order, but it behooves us to go forward as being suggested by DPW following their implementation schedule,
Right,
to avoid that situation. But if we can't afford to do so, because we're at some point, I've talked about this, we're gonna need a debt exclusion,
yeah,
or we're gonna have to drastically reduce services provided to the community in other areas and redirect those tax dollars to the CWMP
right,
if we don't get a debt exclusion. Or if neither of those happen, yeah, what happens? We end up delaying the implementation of a lot of the sewer expansion. What does that mean from a regulatory standpoint?
right. And that may, if we have to delay, as is pointed out in the town's November 20th filing with the EFSB, if we delay, that may in turn affect the receipt of some of the town's low and no interest loans from the revolving loan fund. So this is a dynamic process too. But Neil, I think this is a great idea, and I'm supportive. And Jim, do you agree as well?
Yeah, I do. I just, let's move on. I've got some questions about the tripling of debt.
Yep.
But it's for this conversation, let's just move on.
Okay, good.
Okay, so the last thing is just modernize the format, include more charts and color would be my proposal, so that we can try to capture and keep the reader's interest. Of all the people on the town council, I believe only one of them majored in financial area during college. So while they're all, I'm sure, interested in budgets and all,
Yeah,
Yeah,
a more attractive document if we can, and I think we can do it easily.
yeah,
right. And as a general comment, so last year our report was 10 pages. I envision this year's report being at least half again as long, given the information we want to add, but we'll see how that shakes out as we move along.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this will change dramatically by the time we get to March. We don't even have the time. Trying to think
Okay.
ahead. So
Okay, good, great.
I can almost,
Clarification, just for clarification, half again as long is 5
The
pages or 15 pages? What,
No, so the the most recent report is 10 pages.
10?
I
Yeah.
think this is going to be 15 to 18 pages.
Okay.
I'm guessing.
yeah,
But-
and I think that one of the things that I'd actually use this slide to try to show, most of the last year's sections map to this year's sections
Okay.
in what I proposed.
Okay,
And we collapsed one down in terms of both the 2 5-year sections into one. I think
Right.
if we even adding at the bottom the implications to debt, which would be new this year, we have an appendix for a lot of stuff. I think we should try to push, things that are highly data intensive into the appendix for those people who really want to see the detail.
yeah,
And that way not make it, a 15-page, I got to read the whole thing to understand what we're trying to say.
okay, good.
Okay, moving right along, the other thing, because I do want to stick to the hour, as kind of we all agreed. Many of the charts from last time, we can do again. And I've actually done most of them over again with the data that we have, because most of the charts from last time actually came from the submissions, not from the town manager's recommendations. Most of the recommendations were in the text. But I think we can add a whole slew of new charts that will help us make our stories stick together a little bit more. One of the things that I noticed in the data is, boy, did the 5-year plans change dramatically again.
Yeah.
And this is not the first year. I think that's an issue we might want to understand better and maybe speak to in the report. I talked earlier about pie charts that would show the area of need to the degree that we can get beyond being, unreasonably subjective of how to categorize things, and so on. So I've actually put in the draft a whole bunch of illustrations of that you'll get by tomorrow when I send that out.
Okay, great.
The one big thing, and I wish Wendy was here for this, because I think she is a Google Docs user. What I'm proposing is that instead of everyone doing the sections in whatever they happen to be using, we all just use one free software, which is Word on the web, in one integrated document, and no longer need to email updates and versions, so that every meeting we start out, well, do I have the latest version? We'll eliminate consolidation. Everyone can work on their section at any time and at the same time, and can actually see the other sections to see, did something get changed in them if they are interested. We can also, by putting it out there on the cloud, we can let other team members like Lillian, Mark, and anybody else, we can actually give them view-only authority so they can keep track of things. Because what we don't want to do is end up commenting on things,
Right.
which is outside of an open meeting.
Right.
It won't require anybody to buy anything new. It works in your web browser. So there's no software to download, no malware, etc. And of course, the good news is it's free. The bad news, the limitations are, you need an internet connection, but so we do with Zoom, obviously. There is always, in anything you do, a nominal learning curve. I'm pretty proficient in Word. Using Word on the web is a little bit different. It doesn't do all the things that the desktop does. For instance, you can't embed charts from Excel in Word on the web. You have to put it in as a picture. So at the end of the day, those things that we have as tables you can do in Word on the web, although they may
Okay.
not be great, but for charts and things of that nature, there'll be a final edit at the end by just taking everything from Word on the web, which opens, by the way, automatically in desktop Word, and doing the final editing there.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Okay. So from a process point of view, I think that works unless anybody knows something I don't.
That sounds good. I mean, I'm very used to Microsoft Word. I've never used Word on the web, but how hard could it be if I'm used to desktop Word?
And I think for the most part, and I was thinking mostly of Wendy in this, because if she's using Google Docs only for her word processing, this works very similarly. And most of what the content contributors other than me have been doing is it's mostly tables from the town manager and text. So that's pretty straightforward. You just type.
Okay.
And I can show you that if I stop sharing and then start sharing again to the other screen. Can you see my Google Safari
Yes.
browser?
Yep.
If I go to the Microsoft Office Online, and you can see it looks a little bit different than what you've probably used, but I'll send you a link and you'll be able to open up the document and what it will look like. Whoops, wrong document. Sorry.
So the whole Microsoft Office suite is online and free?
Yes. Well, yeah, it's a cut down version.
Yeah.
But yes, the whole thing is out there, and the real thing that it offers is collaboration,
Yeah.
which we need to be a little bit careful of, because what we don't want to do is start making changes and discussing things offline outside of open meetings. But I
Okay.
think we can do things, and I'll show you, for instance, here. This is the page before that it starts. What I've done is each section has a label using the headings function in Word. And you can add comments to what you do. So for instance, and other people can see it without having to screw up all the text, such as suggested report format standards. Okay.
Well, can you assign tasks and comments to people? So you say, at Jim Sproul, please update this section and I'll get notification. Does it work that way as well? Like,
as far as I've been able to tell, the notification thing does not work.
okay. Okay.
System. The other thing is, other than suggesting grammar, and I actually talked to the Attorney General's office who handles open meeting laws, we are not allowed to say, have Jim rewrite this. We can say, there's a grammatical issue here and here's what it is.
Oh my
And
God.
that's all we can talk to is grammatical issues. We can't say, add this. You can, so we just need to be careful that we're documenting. I use it to just say the stuff on the left is a draft. Make sense?
Yeah.
But for instance, here's,
This looks a lot like Google Docs.
yes, it's very, very similar,
Yeah.
with some of the same limitations.
Yeah. Nice
But
work, Neil. Nice work. Jeez.
Each of these sections will start out with a heading. People can then, and this, by the way, is what last year's by need looks like.
Okay.
You can see water pollution, water supply, and then water recreation. And that adds up to last year to 74% of what was approved. By the way, I would classify things. But it's totally possible for anyone who has authorization, which will be all the team members, and certainly the person in charge of the section, you can just take and delete stuff and start all over again.
Yeah.
That's how this thing works. And you'll see a bunch of the charts. Here was my own personal analysis of, how town debt would go if we didn't approve the whole thing, but you took the plan and you approved all of the CWMP that's there, except for one thing. In 2027, CWMP added a reverse osmosis and ultraviolet treatment plant. that would allow wastewater to be turned into potable water for $60 million. What they did to keep the cost down in the 5 years is they took 3 of the sewer systems and they pushed them out past 2029. I'm not sure how people will look at that eventually, but so I didn't include both those. But you
Okay,
can see, you can very quickly get up there if you follow the plan as the 5-year plan is currently exhibited.
right.
Meaning
Okay.
that it goes as Mark said. Enterprise gets pretty much everything they ask for because they can self-fund that from user fees. General fund last year, I think, got only 42% of what they proposed, and CWMP got all of 30 million they asked for. So these are all things to look at. And as I said, I put a lot of stuff in the appendix, things like the approval process
Yeah.
for prioritization, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah. All the stuff last year we had on page 2, the
Yes.
process, yeah, all that goes in the appendix, which is excellent. Good.
Okay, so that's basically that. And if I go back and I do this right again, I'll go back to the presentation and we can go to hopefully the 4 things that we really need to discuss here. Okay. And that is calendar.
Right.
Today we're at where it says today, we're January 4th. I think we have time, if people have time, for 2 more meetings that would be useful before we get the report from the town manager. One would be to come back and pick a date to talk about people's experience using Word on the web and ideas as they look at the data. And then maybe a second, or what I have is a third meeting to review any sections that have been already drafted in an open meeting. Because some of these are all about the submission, not what the is recommended. Does anybody so I'll go through the whole thing and then we'll come back to that.
Okay.
And actually, what for next meeting, what we also might want to do is refine this calendar beyond the March 4th date that's highlighted there in terms of how many drafts do we think we're going to want.
Right.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't want to go every other week? Until we don't need it? I mean, just set a tempo?
I can probably do that.
I think I can as
You
well.
can always cancel if you don't need them, but at least just to set a tempo that we.
Okay, what day, is there a day of the week other than Thursday, which
Oh,
I've
I
been,
see what you're saying. Okay.
is a
Yeah.
bad time?
So today is Thursday, so generally Mondays, Mondays are generally good for me. Thursdays are not good, and Fridays are not good. Tuesdays and Wednesdays can be good as well. Why don't we focus on, since some of us may take long weekends, maybe focus on Tuesday or Wednesday meetings every other week? How does that sound, Jim, to you for your schedule?
Wednesday, I travel to Boston every Wednesday, so
Okay,
might be tough for me to make it back at 5 o'clock.
okay,
Not impossible, but my preference of those 2 days of the week would be on
Tuesday,
Tuesday, if not Monday.
okay.
So the next Tuesday is the 9th, and the one after that is the 16th.
Right.
You want to do 2 weeks?
Yeah, and Neil, you're talking about between now and March 4th, you're talking about a meeting, a bi-weekly meeting.
I think that would, I think that would be as much as we need.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the 16th, the 30th, the 13th and 27th, we have ample, we have a lot of time to meet. Do Tuesdays work for you, Neil?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Can do.
Okay.
Mark, how
Okay.
about for you?
Tuesday, what time?
This time works for me. I don't know if.
I think you probably got the busier calendar, sir.
Yeah.
What worked for
So-
you?
You
So,
want- Okay,
Could we do it during the business day when Mark's, so he doesn't have to? How do you feel about that, Mark?
yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at my calendar on Tuesdays, because I do have some
So-
standing meetings on every Tuesday.
so the
Yeah.
16th, the 30th, the 13th, and the 27th are the potential biweekly dates that we're talking about, Mark.
16th, 30th, and what were the other two?
And then the 13th and the 27th. Just doing it every other week, starting on this Tuesday, the 16th.
Okay, so I'm available every Tuesday except the 13th, but I can have Gareth, my assistant director,
Sure.
attend that meeting, set up the meeting and so forth.
And and what time are you saying would be good for you? Does 5 o'clock work? Is that better or worse for you?
Yeah, let's see.
Because
I
5
think- I
o'clock
think-
is,
5 o'clock is good.
sorry?
Yeah, 5 o'clock is good. I may have to do it from home.
Yeah,
That's the only thing. I don't know if I'll be able to do it from the office on Tuesdays because I believe it conflicts with my wife's schedule. She's working late on those
Yeah.
evenings, so I gotta be home.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Well, do
5
you- So 5 PM, Neil and Jim on the 16th and 30th of February, of January, and the 13th and 27th of February.
Excellent.
Okay, good. So Mark, maybe you could fire out some of those invites. And Mark, by the way, if you've got a conflict, if you could just set up the meeting and open the meeting, then you don't have to sit around and listen to us talk.
Actually, yeah, thank you, Hector, for mentioning that because I just learned today how to set up a co-host
Ah,
through Zoom. So I might be able to make Neil, for example, the alternate host for a meeting that I can't attend. Do you have a Zoom account, Neil?
No, but I can get one if that would help.
Well, I think you just have to be logged into Zoom. You can get the free version of Zoom, which allows
I
you.
have that. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
that.
I think I think we could test it out. You would have to log into Zoom and then use the link you received through the email in order to start the meeting. And we can test that. So make sure that
Okay.
I think
Yeah,
the free version of Zoom at least used to have a 40-minute limitation.
still does. Yeah.
Yeah, it still does, and there's some benefit to that because you can restart it. Yeah. The only thing I don't think it has are two functions. One is the ability to record that you have there, Mike, Mark, for the that I think we'll have to figure out how to do. The other thing is, and I should have brought this up earlier, we have to take minutes for this meeting, right?
Yes.
Can we use the AI in Zoom to do that in the future?
We can. In fact, I turned it on this evening and I'm going to see how it works. And
Fantastic.
yeah, because we don't have to take everything down verbatim.
Right.
Just the important things, the votes, for example, if you voted on anything, the general topics that you discussed, but you don't have to do verbatim minutes.
Yes. Oh, that's great. And because we'll never get to what Teresa's able to do. I mean, she's just unbelievably good.
Yeah. Yeah, those go beyond what's required, but they're very helpful for somebody
Yeah.
who did not attend the meeting.
Correct. Okay, so I think we got the calendar, which I think was the most important thing. The next thing that I had on the agenda was who wanted to do which sections. Given we're at 5:52, I would propose we do this at our next meeting.
Okay,
yeah,
these are the areas.
I think that's fine. since I'm a debt person for my banking career, I would, raise my hand for the debt section. I'm really curious to do that analysis and see where it comes out. So I would raise my hand for that, but, I'm happy to defer all of this until the next meeting.
I think that'd be great, actually, because the one area of finance I have zero expertise in is treasury and debt.
Yeah.
So I could learn a lot from you.
Okay. And the other area that as you and I've discussed, Neil, the CWMP is something I've looked at a lot, but that's going to be a major section, might require more than one person, but at any rate,
Okay.
that sounds good.
Jim, is there any area that we can
I'm
worry about?
I'm willing to do anything. I think you two guys know the best. I'll pick after you. You guys do what you're comfortable, and then I'll help out wherever I can.
Okay, well, we can work on this next.
Yeah.
I would propose that we end this so that people can get to the town council meeting, as you guys are gonna have to do. Anybody want to second that?
Yeah, before we do that, Neil, just to wrap up, so you're gonna email a link to this mock-up document that you have on Microsoft Word?
I am going to do that right after we end, since we've decided we're willing to start Microsoft Word on the
Right.
web. Yes.
Right, and
I'll send you a link, and to the degree anybody, I haven't been able to do it because I have a Microsoft account.
yeah,
If it turns out it doesn't work, I'll do whatever is necessary to help people get through it.
okay. Yeah, and while you were showing us that, I logged into Microsoft365.com. So I assume that once you send me that link, I'll be in, and I do have a Microsoft account too. I'll just be able to open that mock-up document that you have.
You should
So
be
what
able.
I'm hoping is that when we're done with this, I can drop my Microsoft 365 office expense that I have to have every year. Save me $400.
Yeah, you have to
400.
pay,
No, I can tell you it's not $400 every year.
you
for
just
a-
buy it once,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, but you can lease it on an annual subscription basis for $70 for one person.
Okay.
Or
I'll
you
talk
can
to
buy,
you.
or
You're
you
on my
can,
call list tomorrow, Neil. All right.
or you can just buy the program, right?
Yeah, but it's a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Is that? I thought it was like a couple $100 for me to buy the Microsoft Office software when I got my laptop last summer.
Once upon a time it was.
Yeah,
The subscription gets you online storage and all kinds of other stuff. I've fallen for that value.
yeah.
Okay,
All right, gentlemen. Thank you.
anything else?
All
Got
right, I propose that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second. I'll be the clerk, Neil,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and Hector is a yes. Thank you, gentlemen.